Okay, so hi everyone. Carrie, welcome to the show. Chocolate Tales' first show, hosting Carrie Beal, the chocolate doctor, and her easy temper. We've got really cool stuff for you in store today. Hopefully, you can stay with us for as long as possible, or at least as long as it takes to explain how to temper chocolate and why is even tempering chocolate a thing. What happens when we don't temper chocolate? What are the advantages? What are the difficulties? What's the science? So here we go. Carrie Beal is going to get started. I'm going to be asking you questions as we go.
Okay.
Really looking forward to your presentation. Teach us what we need to know.
Okay, well, let's just start with the basics of tempering. Everybody has picked up a magazine that says, take your chocolate, melt it, dip your strawberries in it, and put them in the fridge.
Right.
And you take them out the next day and it looks like they've got dust all over them. They've got white streaks or the chocolate never hardens up. And that is because your chocolate hasn't been tempered.
Interesting. Okay.
Temper involves getting the right cocoa butter crystals in the chocolate. Cocoa butter can live in 6 different crystalline forms. We want it to be in one particular one, what we call form 5 crystals. And those are the ones that are stable, give you the shine, the snap. When you have a mold, it allows the chocolate to retract from the mold.
Okay, so hang on. So when you talk about crystals, so do these crystals appear naturally, or are they? So why do they even appear? When do they appear? How does that work?
Oh, that's more than an hour, David.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so I actually know all the answers.
You know all the answers.
I'm just playing devil's advocate
Yes.
here.
So the crystals tend to exist in nature. Your form 1s, form 2, form 3s are very low temperature. They don't really have any part in what we do here.
Okay.
Form 4 and form 5 are the ones we want. Form 5, form 4 form at a slightly lower temperature. They are the ones that get us into trouble. They're the ones that give us the dusty looking chocolate
Interesting. Okay.
when we have tempered ourselves. Cocoa butter is always trying to go to the most stable form, and form 6 is the most stable form. So if you take a chocolate bar and you leave it in your car for a year, and you open it up and you look at it and it looks like it's got dust all over the surface, that's because the form 6 crystals have formed out of the form 5 crystals and have worked their way through the surface of the chocolate, and that's what gives you the dusty looking chocolate.
Okay, so you're saying that we can temper our chocolate, but if we leave it for a long time, we'll still get that same whiteness.
We're still going to get bloom.
And that's what it's called,
happening.
bloom. Okay.
Now you can take that chocolate, if it's a solid chocolate bar, you can melt it down, you can temper it again, and get those form 5 crystals back, and get your chocolate back into shape.
You know, it's funny because we actually met about 6 years ago. Is that about right?
About 6 years.
And at the time, I was trying to make sure that my chocolate always comes tempered. So I had difficulties. I read books about it. I saw videos. I was also working with people trying to show them how to do it. And I was finding that on my end, I was sometimes successful and sometimes not. And then I came to you and we actually had this conversation before. So for me, it's a real trigger of wonderful memories. Thanks you, Carrie. I think it's even 7 years now. And really, when as time passed, when you taught me how to temper, I had amazing success. Like I really got it.
Yes.
And it inspired me to show people how to do it as well. And about 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
2015.
2015. Okay, so 2015, you approached me and you said, David, I have a surprise for you. I'd like to come over and show you how to temper chocolate in 2 minutes. I think that's what you said.
Did I?
Yeah, that's something along that line.
I've honed my sales presentation since then.
Okay. Okay, so tell us a little bit about this easy temper, which really has changed the way I make chocolate, and I'm sure you've experienced that with other chocolatiers as well. That kind of effect. Tell us about what this is and what is the difference? Why is it difficult for me, or why is it so time consuming for me to temper chocolate without a machine like this? And why does this machine even work? How does it work?
Okay, well, let's start with some of the basics. We know we're trying to get those form 5 crystals, so how do we get them?
Okay.
We can get them by taking our chocolate, heating it up to melt out all the crystals, cooling it down below the temperature where the form 3, 4s, and 5s reform.
Okay.
Then heating it back up again to get rid of the 3s and 4s and be left with only 5.
So you're basically depicting the temperature curve,
yes.
correct?
So this is wild crystallization. We get a bunch of crystals, we melt out the bad ones, we're left with the good ones. Or you can take your chocolate, you can melt it, you can add handfuls of tempered chocolate.
Okay. Yep.
And as long as when you get down to your working temperature, which is different for milk white or dark chocolate, you are just melting out your seed, then that chocolate that you've added, that tempered chocolate that you have added, will provide seed to temper your chocolate.
Right.
So you don't have to take it way down and back up again. You just need to get it down to the working temperature.
So you're shortening your process.
You can also, if you are a fancy machine that costs about 50 grand, shear your chocolate. If you shear chocolate between two close surfaces, it will instantly make Form 5 crystals.
Interesting.
So this is how those machines work. They are constantly throwing the chocolate in and out of temper, and what comes out of the spout is in temper, and what's down here is not in temper.
However, you have to have a certain temperature, right?
You do have to be in the right temperature range to get to have the crystals not melt out.
I see. Okay. Yep.
So this little baby is a cocoa butter seed generator. So what I do here.
So cocoa butter, what exactly is that? Is that, again,
butter
playing devil's advocate for the
cocoa
viewers
butter
here?
is about 50% of all cocoa beans.
Okay, yep.
It is a vegetable fat that has 6 different crystalline forms.
Okay.
It is hard at room temperature, but it melts at body temperature. So that's why you get that lovely melt.
Right. So that's the creamy effect in chocolate.
That's the melting at the temperature of your mouth. Yes.
Right. Yep.
So I take cocoa butter, which has been pressed out of cocoa beans.
Okay.
I put it into a container inside my machine. And after about 12 hours, I give it a stir. I'm looking for this nice silky consistency.
Interesting.
At that silky consistency, it will contain only Form 5 crystals.
So if you could show that to the viewers, show them kind of tilt the box, show them how it looks like. It kind of looks like velvety butter.
We call it silk.
Okay, so that's the word you use.
Silky consistency. Okay. Yeah. You could call it face cream.
Okay.
Because it's again that same consistency, and this stuff is actually lovely on your lips.
Excellent.
And as hand cream. So in this form, this silky form, it contains about 15% Form 5 crystals.
Okay.
1% of that by weight added to your melted chocolate will instantly temper it.
So the chocolate has to be a certain temperature?
It has to be at a certain temperature. The interesting thing is with the easy temper, because you're providing perfect seed, it can all be at the same temperature. So you don't have different temperatures for milk white and dark.
So what you're describing is so this is what I used to do. I used to take my chocolate and I used to bring it to around 45 degrees Celsius.
Yep.
And then I used to bring it down to around 27, agitate it to create lots of crystals.
And 27 if it is dark chocolate.
If it is dark chocolate.
If it is milk chocolate, you're going to be taking it down to 25.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. And then I used to mix it. And then I used to add it back into the original batch where it came from, cooling down my batch and dispersing these crystals.
Yeah, so you're using the heat left in that original chocolate to heat up and get rid of your 3s and 4s.
So to explain, why would you do that? Why would you melt out? So why would you take the cold chocolate and add it to the warm chocolate?
This is very similar to the method we talked about, cooling down the whole mass to 25 or 27. It creates 3s, 4s, and 5s.
Okay.
And then we melt it back up again to get rid of the 3s and 4s. And if we don't go over our working temperature, we'll have only 5s. But if you can use your bowl of warm chocolate as the source of heat, rather than using a heat gun or a microwave to bring yourself back up to temperature.
So what you're saying is you're essentially going from 45, part of that batch being cooled down and agitated at around 25 to 27.
Yep.
Putting it back into the batch, melting out all the wild crystals.
The 3s and 4s.
The bad crystals.
Yeah.
And then once, if you've done your job correctly.
And you don't go too high.
You reach your temperature of about?
Probably about 30 degrees for dark chocolate, 30, 31, a little lower for milk chocolate.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So that's what I used to do. And then when I got this, I didn't do that anymore. What did I do? I just had the chocolate at a...
So you have your chocolate. You don't have to take it up to 45. You just have to have it melted. You're probably going to have to get it to about 35 to get it melted.
Okay, right.
Because if it is at the same temperature that the silk is in here, it's going to have the same texture as the silk in here.
Right.
So it's not going to be melted.
Yeah.
So you'll probably have to take it to about 35 initially. So you cool it down to 33.5 degrees Celsius or less.
Yep.
You add your 1% by weight, you give it a stir, and you're ready to go.
So just to explain to the viewers, so you're taking a chocolate that is already pre-made, a couverture, right? That's what they call it. And you're taking them, they're either cowlets or little pistons, little chippets, we'll call them. We melt them down at around 35 to 40 degrees Celsius. We let them sit. They cool down to the same temperature that
to
the
about
cocoa
33
butter.
and a half.
33 and a half. Okay. Yeah. Great. Okay, this is exciting. So what's next? So what's the next step after that? Do you want to show the viewers the process?
Sure.
How would you like to?
Why don't we do it?
Okay, great. So let me switch spaces with you. I have a feeling that you're going to need this spot more than I do.
Way.
I'm going to be in your way. That was a nice way of saying it. Thanks, Carrie. So I'm going to move over here. I'm going to dash over, and you can dash over there.
All right.
And here we go.
So what I'm going to start with is a bowl.
Okay.
I have some melted chocolate in a melter over here. It's at about 34 degrees, I hope.
Okay.
First of all.
So how do you check what temperature it's at?
I use an infrared thermometer.
Okay, fancy.
Now, infrared thermometers can be notoriously inaccurate, as can any thermometer.
Okay.
So I actually have a little thing that allows me to calibrate my thermometers.
So explain that to me. What does that mean when you calibrate?
Calibrate is just checking to make sure that the thermometer is at the right temperature. Some thermometers come with the ability to change the set point. Some don't. What I do when I need new infrared thermometers, I go to Canadian Tire. I buy 6 of these when they're on sale. Okay. I bring them home. I check them all. I take back the 4 that don't work.
Perfect.
I get 4 more. I check those. I take back the 2 that don't work. I bring home 2 more. And I keep doing that until I have 6 working thermometers on sale. The best sale price I've ever got for these Canadian Tire ones is $9.99.
Fantastic. Okay.
I have a bowl. I have tared the bowl so that I know the weight of chocolate that I'm going to put in it.
Okay, so you eliminated the weight of the bowl. Perfect.
I'm eliminating the weight of the bowl by tearing.
Okay, awesome. So you're filling up the bowl with some, so this is a milk chocolate? Or?
No, I actually dark chocolate. Dark chocolate is easier to work with, I find, for demos. I have got 200 grams of chocolate here.
Perfect.
I want to test the temperature, and it's about 32, so that's good.
So it can be lower?
It can be lower.
Okay.
It just can't be higher, because if it's higher, it's going to melt out all those crystals that you've got sitting in there.
So what happens, for example, if the chocolate's at 28 degrees Celsius?
It'll temper just fine.
Okay, so there's no problem with crystals emerging, say, 27 degrees Celsius?
No, because we are overwhelming any crystals that might be forming in there with the crystals from the machine.
So you're basically, what you're saying is you're eliminating the possibility of other crystals forming in the chocolate by overwhelming it with an amazing amount of the right type of seed.
Essentially.
Okay, perfect. Yep. Beautiful.
All right, so we're going to reach into our machine. We are going to pull out our container.
Okay.
I'm going to give it a little stir, and I've got 200 grams in here, so I want 2 grams of cocoa butter.
So now you're using a knife. Is that the best thing to use? A spoon?
Some people use spoons. Some people use spoons. So I want 2 grams. Now, this is not an exact science, but damn, I'm good.
You got a little bit of practice.
I have had a little bit of practice. You know, I'm sitting here using a scale today at home. Do I use a scale? No.
Okay.
I go down into the basement and I say, I'm tempering chocolate.
Actually, I also don't use a scale. I've kind of felt bad about it until now, but now that you say that,
you feel better.
I'm feeling a lot better about myself.
So look at this chocolate right now. Do you see the fluidity?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do you see the color of this chocolate?
It's pretty dark. It's not very reflective.
As I stir this in, do you see how that color of that chocolate is changing?
I sure do.
It's getting lighter.
I do. It's more reflective now, isn't it?
And do you see how much more viscous it has gotten?
So it's kind of thickened up.
It's thickened up.
Okay. Now, if I were to add too much of the cocoa butter, would it thicken up even more?
It won't thicken up even more initially, but as time goes on, it will thicken up more over time.
So you're saying that I put the cocoa butter in, it won't over thicken, but in the long run, when it starts to crystallize and cool down,
more quickly.
Okay, got it.
So that's it. That's all that it takes to get tempered chocolate.
And one more question. Mm-hmm. So remember you spoke about we leave the chocolate there for 3 months or so, and then you get the 6th crystal and you get all that bloom on top of it.
Yes.
If I add too much cocoa butter, will that cause that effect to come sooner for the 6th crystal?
No. It's actually the storage of your chocolate that contributes most to the Form 6.
Right.
The more healthy Form 5 crystals you've got in there, ideally, the longer, the more delay.
So for our viewers that don't want to make chocolate, they just want to eat great chocolate, buy great chocolate, how should they store their chocolate? What's the best way to do it?
They should store it in a cool room temperature. They should not store it in the fridge, because if you store it in the fridge, what happens is when you take it out of the fridge, condensation forms on the surface, because fridges are below the dew point.
Yep.
And the sugar from the chocolate moves out into the condensation. Mm-hmm. Condensation then evaporates, and you're left with sugar bloom on the surface of the chocolate, which is different from fat bloom, but looks just as bad.
And does that mean the chocolate is bad chocolate, or does it just mean that?
It just means that it is not the most ideal chocolate.
Okay.
If you keep your chocolate in the fridge and you eat it like 24 hours after taking it out, it's probably not going to be an issue.
Okay.
I occasionally find myself at home. I have a chocolate room in my basement, and it will be like midnight, and I will be lying in bed and thinking, damn it, I did not take those molds out of the fridge.
Okay, so...
And I do the debate. Am I going to get my ass out of bed and go down there and get them out, or am I just going to leave them there? Typically, I leave them there, and then in the morning what I do is I just take the whole mold out.
Okay.
Leave the mold out. Don't take the chocolate out of the mold. Condensation will form on the back, but it won't form... It'll form on the outside of the mold on the front. So
right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're basically saying not recommended, but if you do it, all you got to do is let it kind of. I guess in the world of chocolate, for me, the world will end if chocolate ends. But I think everybody feels the same way.
So I have got some tempered chocolate.
Okay. Perfect.
So what I thought we would do.
So you're putting that in a piping bag, right?
I'm putting it in a piping bag. That's kind of I at home when I'm making molds. What I typically do is what's the word I'm looking for?
That's a good question.
This. What's this?
So a ladle.
A ladle.
Yes.
I use a ladle to ladle out the chocolate.
Okay.
Yeah, I worked last night. What can I say?
Chocolate soup.
I was up most of the night. So one will have to forgive me for being an idiot this morning.
So what, Carrie? Why are you called? We might as well share with the viewers. Why are you called the Chocolate Doctor? What's the origin of that name?
Oh, well, my friend Rob, who is also a doctor, suggested that would be a good name.
So you are a doctor, so you're an MD?
Yeah.
And you worked yesterday at...
I work in Emerge most of the time. So I also work at the Men's Mission in Hamilton.
Okay, so you truly are the chocolate doctor.
Yeah.
Yes,
but it's funny, when I first got my business license, I went in and they said, I said I wanted the name the Chocolate Doctor. They said, you can't have the name doctor in your name unless you're a real doctor. You're going to have to call it 90516, operating as the Chocolate Doctor. I said, yeah, I can. So she gave me my
so name. you actually, you're actually depicting a very, very truthful name for yourself. Here we go.
So what I'm going to do is just cut the top off of this, and I'm just going to pipe.
So before you do that, just for the viewers, how do you decide how much you're cutting off the tip? I know it's experience, but if they were to do it first,
depends what I'm doing
your advice be?
Depends what I'm doing with it. If I'm using a ganache, like a filling, and I'm using a tiny little mold, then I may cut a smaller hole. If I'm trying to draw with it, it's going to be a tiny little hole. If I'm trying to fill a great big huge mold, then I'm going to slice the whole end off.
Okay, so you're saying you're doing a mold, you can just go for it. You can just
and if you find that piping is too slow, then you just cut a bigger hole.
Okay, cool. So I guess what you're saying is you're better off cutting off a small piece than a big piece, and then you can just always correct. But once you cut big, you can never go back.
True, like it's just like haircuts, right?
Yeah. Oh well, haircuts. I don't do haircuts really well, as you can see. So it's a sore issue. I'm dealing with it well though. So tell me, how do you?
We have drugs for that, eh?
Oh, drugs for everything today. Chocolate is my only drug, so that's where I go.
There you go. But it doesn't grow hair.
No, it does not. So how do you decide how much chocolate you're putting in? And if you didn't put enough chocolate, would you be able to pour a little bit more? Okay, so definitely not kind of your by the book thing to lick your fingers. But I know, Carrie, you're a bit of a rule breaker.
I am.
So that's okay. I'll let that be as it is. What can I say?
It's never going to change. You can't see me. All right, so we've got just a couple more molds here that we'll put a little bit of chocolate in.
So that's so those were what, dinosaurs?
Those are dinosaurs.
Okay, and these ones are
just a flower.
And
actually, they make a lovely, lovely mold.
Amazing. Okay. So again, if you didn't pour enough, you can always re-pour, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And then I noticed that you put your mold to the side there. Is there a reason why you're leaving it out? Why not just put it, like you said, in the fridge straight away?
So I will not be putting it in the fridge straight away. I will be putting it in the fridge in the future.
Okay.
What I am watching for is to see the chocolate starting to harden around the edges.
Okay.
When the chocolate is hardening around the edges, that is when it is most rapidly crystallizing.
Okay.
And when it is most rapidly crystallizing, it is actually producing heat.
Right.
The latent heat of crystallization.
So the chemical reaction.
The crystallization reaction, as those crystals are pulling themselves closer together and more are forming, they throw off heat. If I have a great big huge egg mold and I fill it full of chocolate and I turn it upside down on the counter so that there's no air circulation underneath, it will produce enough heat to actually throw itself out of temper on the top. And I will have a huge chunk on the top that's out of temper.
So you're saying that if you have large quantities of chocolate, the risk of losing your temper is greater? Is that what you're saying?
There's a number of different factors, but yes, larger quantities of chocolate. If you leave a bowl of chocolate sitting, it will often be out of temper in the middle.
Right. And I've seen that a million times.
Because of the latent heat. But with molds and stuff, you just need good air circulation. You need to be sort of cognizant of when it's starting to rapidly crystallize. To throw it into the fridge, usually for 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, so to clarify, we leave it out for about 5 to 10 minutes until the edges are kind of hardening.
That'll depend on your room temperature. There's a bunch of different factors that'll determine how long that takes.
Okay, so just generally speaking, 5 to 10 minutes is a typical time frame. And then we put it in the fridge, and that process helps us cool it down in the
carries
right
off
speed.
That latent heat of crystallization.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. And the mold itself, is there anything in the mold that helps us as well with that element of taking the heat away? Like, for example, what I always suggest people buy, like the real chocolate molds, right? These chocolate molds rather than...
The heavy polycarbonate molds are much more desirable than the hobby grade molds. Mind you, hobby grade molds are sometimes the only ones you've got available.
Right.
And at Easter and stuff like that, when I need to make a bunch of suckers, I will often get not the cheesy hobby grade molds, but the slightly heavier hobby grade molds. I actually have a thermoformer, so I've been making some hobby grade molds at home as well.
I actually saw one of the posts.
Yes, you saw the fish lips.
I saw the fish lips. I did see the fish lips.
You did see the fish lips.
So to clarify, if I go to the bulk barn, or one of the viewers goes to the bulk barn or store like that, buys those simple sheet molds, temper their chocolate and mold just like you did, they're going to get perfect results, or
they're going to get reasonably good results.
Okay.
The lovely thing about polycarbonate is the heavy polycarbonate. It's more similar to the old metal molds, which cool at a certain rate, contract at a certain rate relative to the chocolate, which is cooling and contracting at a certain rate. It leaves the mold nicely.
Nice.
Often you'll find with the cheap plastic molds from the bulk barn that the plastic itself does not contract at the same rate, so you get demolding marks.
Okay.
On
so swirling effects.
Swirly effects where it just never separates from a bit. So when you go to knock it out, you see little marks on it.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fantastic.
So let's just pretend that this is ready to go to the fridge. Actually, it is. Okay. Can you see how around the edges it is starting?
Yeah, I see that. So basically, the reflection is not the same. It's almost like an eggshell kind of reflection versus.
We will plunk it in our fridge over here.
Oh, okay, there you go. Beautiful.
And then, through the magic of modern television, we will pull out our finished molds that have been in the fridge.
Okay.
And, like a little ice cube tray, you can give it a little twist.
Okay.
And then...
you're going to flip it over.
You are going to...
1, 2, 3. Here we go.
Knock it out. And if all goes according to plan, a bunch of little dinosaurs.
Fantastic. Okay, look at that. Beautiful. I feel like stealing those, giving them to one of my daughters. They're going to love that.
I don't know. You may have to fight some other guys around here for it.
Yeah, there's a crew here that has already been promised some chocolates. I might have to do a bit of a routine here. Fantastic. Right. Okay, so now these chocolates, they're tempered, right?
That is tempered chocolate.
Okay, and we know that. How do we know that they're tempered?
We know that because they came out of the mold.
Okay, there we go. So,
and when you look at the back of the mold, you can see that it's glossy. It's not shiny. Once it's cooled down, it's not going to be shiny. It's going to be glossy. It's only shiny up against a shiny surface. So the other side of these are shiny, but the back is glossy.
So just to clarify, what happens if it's not tempered? It doesn't come out of the mold?
Sometimes it doesn't come out of the mold. Sometimes you have to wash it out of the mold. You can put it in the freezer for about 3 minutes at a time, hoping that will make it contract enough that it'll come out.
Yep.
But sometimes you just have to wash it out of the mold.
Okay, well, that's a good indicator.
I think we have all done it.
Success will be clear.
Indeed.
Here we go. Let's have a look at those guys. Okay, beautiful. Look at those. That's fantastic. Actually, I have a few of those, exactly that design in sheet mold. I don't know if you know.
In sheet molds?
Yes, in sheet molds, exactly that design. Yes. So I know you have a lot of molds in your lab. Would you say a few hundred?
No, a few thousand.
A few thousand.
Yes, I know.
I'm definitely not there yet.
God knows.
But I don't know if you remember, but you got me in touch with those friends over at All-Type.
All-Type molds, lovely people.
And they supplied me. I have 900 of their molds now.
Do you?
I do. Plus all the regular molds that I have. So that's one of the designs.
Now, we're not going to mention that they're the ones who make the molds for
they
right?
They do.
Yes, they do. They are such lovely people.
They are very, very nice
Their
people.
Their son
Yes,
is
look at that. Beautiful.
a drug rep, and that's how I met him in the first place.
Okay, so you met him in emergency room? Is that?
Actually, no, I met him in an office when I was doing a locum. All right, so that is molded chocolates.
Okay, all right. So we started out with a melted chocolate. You made sure that the temperature was about 32, 33 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
You added 1% cocoa butter.
1% by weight, yep.
By weight. You added it in, you mixed it. How important is mixing?
Mixing is very important, and that introduces the crystals to the rest of the bowl, to the rest of the melted chocolate, and crystals grow on crystals. You remember in grade school where you had that little thing where you had a little rope and you put it in the sugar solution and it grew crystals? Crystals grow on other crystals.
Fantastic. Okay, so when you're mixing them, you're basically encouraging their growth.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So then you molded them in the mold. You let the mold sit out for a little bit, put it in the fridge.
Yep.
How long does it stay in the fridge for?
10 to 15 minutes typically.
Okay.
I am always looking at the bottom of the mold when it's in there to see that I can see some sign that it's starting to separate. You can see that this is not separating.
It's not.
It's dark. It's
that.
stuck to the mold.
Okay.
So you will notice over time that it starts to pull away from the mold. Ideally, you don't take it out until it's fully pulled away from the mold.
So you want every single one of the crevices to have that demolding effect.
Yes.
And then why do you do this in that case? Just to help the final process?
It just helps get things out a little better.
Okay, great, perfect. So, great. So this is what? This is 2-dimensional molds? Is that what we just did? Is that what you described it?
As compared to 3-dimensional. Shall we do some 3-dimensional molds?
I think that would be wonderful.
That would
yes,
be fun.
Let's do it.
Okay,
here we go.
So where is my 3-dimensional mold? Where is he?
Do we need to,
Here he
I'm
is.
going to
Here he
switch
is.
with you. No,
Here he is.
Okay.
Okay. So this little doggy,
Perfect. Yep.
a little Scotty dog of some sort, terrier
A Snoopy dog,
of some sort.
opinion.
Now, typically, I mold in milk chocolate rather than in dark chocolate.
And why is that?
It's a little softer. It's a little easier to eat, and most of my molding is for kids.
Okay.
Kids tend to like
Milk chocolate?
milk chocolate a
Right.
little more than they like dark chocolate.
You know, we actually polled at Chocolate Tales. We polled our client base, and we found that 54% of the people prefer dark chocolate. But then,
Did you divide it up by adults and kids?
well, it was a very general poll. I'm assuming that everyone there was an adult.
Yes.
And that said, we run a lot of events, as you know. Right now, we're running at Chocolate Tales 700 workshops a year.
Yeah. And
at the workshops, we find that about, I'd say, 80% of people prefer milk chocolate. So I kind of tried to, this is kind of relevant, I kind of tried to, what's the discrepancy? What's going on? So my current theory is that when you go out to a workshop or something which they don't usually do, they're suddenly a lot more open to spend the calories than if it's just a day-to-day thing. So that's my theory.
My theory is people really like milk chocolate better, but because it's politically incorrect to like milk chocolate, you must like dark chocolate because, you know, and the bigger the percentage, the better. And that, okay, get me on my high horse here. Percentage of chocolate, what does it mean?
That's a great question. Question. Okay,
so
great.
people say, oh, I only like 80% or better. Well, I mean, this is 100% chocolate.
Right.
So it's the cocoa mass and the cocoa butter that make up the percentage. The other percentage, the 20% of the 80%, is actually sugar. Mm-hmm. So you can have an 80% chocolate that has a whole lot of cocoa butter in it and a very small amount of cocoa mass in it. Mm-hmm. It will be gentle and kind. Right. You can have an 80% that has almost all cocoa mass and almost no additional cocoa butter, and it is going to be typically a little more vicious.
So the description of the percentage, is there any indication on the packaging for our viewers to know, hey, this is a, 80% chocolate, but there's a mix of high ratio of cacao, or the chocolate particles, we'll call them, and a low ratio of cocoa butter. Why is it important?
Yeah, you'd have to look on the back and see what the fat percentage is and do some calculations to figure out what percentage. You could do that. You could do that. Now, a lot of the packaging is a little misleading. All they say is the 80%. They don't get down to brass tacks and say what percentage is fat, right? I mean, they have to say fat, but you have to calculate it back to figure out what that means in terms of cocoa butter.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Not all chocolate was created equal.
Not all chocolate is created equal.
Okay, here we go.
So we're going to temper a little bit more chocolate. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm going to reach into my magic bowl.
All right, beautiful.
And take out
So I see you're filling up just about as much as you did last time?
I'm going to use about as much. It's always nice to have an excess of chocolate when you're working, I find.
Okay, so is this relevant to every type of chocolate making activity, having more than what you need?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. It's just useful that way.
Cool.
Okay, so I've actually got about 250 grams here.
Okay.
This scale will not allow me to do 2.5 grams.
So did you already check the temperature of that? We know that it's...
We know what the temperature is, but yes, I should have checked it.
Okay.
I should have checked it.
Sorry, Carrie.
That's quite all right. There's a lot of things I should do. But, back in the day when I was tempering the old-fashioned way, I was constantly checking the temperature and constantly checking temper test. I've learned to trust this machine so much now that...
Right. And I have to admit, I have a very similar relationship with the chocolate as you're describing. Mm-hmm. So I totally get it.
Yep. All right. So give it a little stir. It's tempered. It's ready to go.
Okay, fantastic. And also... I mean, regardless of the temperature, you can actually tell from the way the chocolate behaves if it's tempered or not.
Yes, you can. And you can, I'm just going to grab myself another towel here.
So that's cool. That's cool paper towel. What's that thing?
This is Scott Shop Towels, Costco, 6 for $15, I think.
Okay, cool.
It's a little heavier. It doesn't shred the way paper towels do. I use it when I'm using colored cocoa butter a lot. Okay. Okay. So what we are going to do with our little guy here.
Definitely done this before.
A few times. Just a few times. So typically, what got me started on this, right?
Chocolate in there. Okay. Yep.
I usually would do milk chocolate. Mm-hmm. So I would paint a dark chocolate eye on this guy first.
Okay.
In this case, because we're using dark chocolate, I've actually painted a milk chocolate eye on there.
I see. So if you were making milk, you'd want a contrast, so you would you would use a different kind of color.
Yeah.
And you don't. I see you don't fill it up all the way to the top.
Well, because I had intended to reach in here with my brush that I had put in here and obviously took out.
All right.
Because I decided I wasn't going to need it, so it's probably sitting in the trunk of my car.
Okay. Got it.
So we can add a little bit more to
the
mother of invention. But the interesting thing is I don't have any bubbles in here. Normally I would reach in with a brush.
Oh, okay.
And get rid of any bubbles.
So why do you use a brush to do that, Carrie? What's the...
Just seems to be, it works well. It doesn't scratch the molds.
Okay.
So what I want to do is just line the inside of this with chocolate.
I can see that it's tempered. You can see how thick it gets.
It's almost very quickly. Exactly.
Now. Yeah.
Now I'm going to take a little bit of my chocolate and make a base.
I see.
For this.
Okay, nice. Very nice.
I'm just going to spread that around, and then I'm going to pour out the excess here. Whoops,
so this is going to be a 3-dimensional hollow shape.
This is going to be a 3D hollow shape, exactly. Now you can get hollow molds that have closed bottoms on them.
Okay.
So in that case, what you're doing is just turning it over and over and over and over while you're waiting.
Okay.
I just find that the open bottom ones are a lot easier for me to work with.
I see. So you're describing a mold that actually is sealed from all directions?
Yep.
And you just constantly turn it around?
Yep.
Okay, until you get the right type of coating on the inside?
And they do make machines that you clip these to, and
they do it automatically.
It turns the whole thing.
Yes, I've seen those machines in
Yes.
my late night YouTube adventures.
I go over to a spot where they use those machines all the time, and occasionally I will take a mold over there.
Okay, there we go. So you've got special special allowances.
With this little guy, I'm essentially going to do the same thing I did with the other. Is I'm waiting to see it starting to rapidly crystallize.
Okay.
Before I throw it in the fridge.
Perfect.
So I'm usually just watching my little pot of chocolate on the bottom here until it does that.
So you see, that's enough. It'll be more or less the same both on the bottom and inside the mold.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that over time you get good at making sure you've knocked enough out and making sure you don't make too thick a bottom.
Got it. Perfect.
If you leave too much chocolate in there, it's all going to drip down and make a very, very thick bottom, which is just not, particularly in dark chocolate, is not. Is not
so how would you know when you're tapping to get rid of excess? How would you know when enough is enough?
Often when it stops dripping.
So that's it. Just stop dripping. You stop tapping. Okay.
Typically.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
So off he goes to the
Beautiful.
fridge.
One more for, there we go.
And
One more for me
then-
later, maybe.
Again, we do the magic
All
of
right,
modern
here we
television thing, and we pull our little Scotty dog out,
Amazing. That was quick.
who was made
Yesterday?
yesterday, 2 days ago, I think.
2 days ago.
At this point.
You're a well-planned lady. Carrie.
Indeed. Well,
Okay.
they do take a while to.
Mhm.
So
you're opening it just like that.
I'm
like
opening it just like that. I'm usually getting my thumb in there.
Okay.
I usually flip it over and make sure that it lets loose from both sides.
Okay. And what happens if it doesn't? What would you?
Well, so you look to see, is it stuck?
Okay.
If it appears to be stuck, then you might be popping it back into the fridge for a little while.
Okay. And do you kind of crack it like you did with the other ones?
You can do a little bit of twisting.
Okay.
Yep.
Beautiful. Look at that.
So there's that little guy.
That's very sweet. Okay.
Isn't he cute?
Very sweet.
Now, these days in France, they seem to be doing a whole bunch of molds with this sort of fractile pattern.
Like a Picasso.
There's one guy.
Cubist.
Yeah, there's one guy who does a fox that's absolutely
cool.
amazing.
Now, would you use gloves for this when you're producing?
Typically, yes. I would.
And why would you do that?
Gloves,
Why can't you
I
just
would
grab it
use
with your hands?
cotton gloves so that the heat of my hands isn't going to leave fingerprints.
I see.
On here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. And I see that there's a line here. Is that kind of
Well,
typical or?
yes, it's. Oops!
Okay.
Oh my God!
Oh,
He's
accidents
lost
happen.
his head.
Oh boy, accidents do
Okay.
happen. But those are beautiful shapes. I love the cubist.
So I must tell you a little
Here we go.
story.
Okay.
I was making an Easter, a very large,
Mhm.
24-inch Easter bunny
Okay.
for the women's auxiliary at the hospital to sell,
Okay.
or to raffle, for Easter. And I molded it the first time, and his head fell off. Molded him the second time, and his head fell off. Molded him the third time. His head didn't fall off, but he had a big honking crack. And I thought, I'm not doing it again. So I got out some chocolate and I painted stitches over the cracks. And then I made Band-Aids out of chocolate clay. And I put them all covered in Band-Aids.
So necessity is
Necessity
the mother
is the mother of invention.
Beautiful.
And he sold well.
I'm sure he did. That's even more artsy than the first version, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So is that something which you find when we use small molds, it's easier?
Small molds are much, much easier.
Okay.
Large molds, you've got a lot of contraction going on.
Mhm.
You've got, some molds are not very good.
So
Some molds
it's
break at the same spot every
So
single
it's
time.
pressure.
It's pressure
Okay.
as it's cooling
Yep.
and contracting.
Right. So you basically know what molds work and don't. How would someone that wants to buy a 3-dimensional mold, like a bigger one, how would they know which one to buy? How would they know? Is there anywhere they can turn to, say?
I would probably talk to the manufacturers of the 3D
Okay.
molds. I picked up a lot of my 3D molds actually in Belgium. I went to the factory and picked up used ones.
Okay. So you know that they were been used for a long time.
Yeah.
That's a smart
But
way to go about it.
still,
So
you
so
know,
I'll
there's
show.
a reason that some of them end up used molds, right?
I'll share with you. So I typically what I do to myself is I'll speak to a client and I know I can do something, but maybe I haven't done it yet. So
Right.
I'll sell it and then I have to deal with the consequences.
Yes.
So I sold about 80 high heel shoes
Oh,
and
very
I
fun.
went and got the molds
Uh-huh.
and then I molded them and they cracked and they
Of course they
cracked
did.
and they cracked again and again. They're
Yeah.
pretty big.
Yeah.
I still have to decorate them.
Mhm.
So I ended up doing to mold it twice. So I had to mold it once
Mhm.
and then I would wait. and then I would mold it again.
Yes.
And then it seemed to work really well. I still had some sort of percentage.
Yes.
But then I realized, well, my product just costs about, 50% more, if not more than that. So how would you advise, chocolatiers, maybe hobbyists that want to sell chocolate, because many times, we know how to do a lot of things. And even if we haven't done something specific, we can still be confident that we can do it. But how would you advise someone gets into that? Like, how do you price something like that? How do you figure that out? Is there any advice there?
That's a good question. Don't underprice. That's about all
that's
I would
the
say.
Advice. That's a good one.
Look out there and see what people are charging for a similar product.
Mm-hmm.
Do not undervalue your product because you can't.
You won't be happy.
You won't be happy, and you can't put the price up later.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this for just a second. If there are any chocolatiers watching or kind of hobbyists that want to get into chocolatiering, what do you think about pricing as to chocolate? Because many times people will see a chocolate and a truffle, and it'll cost $2.50 for a truffle, and they'll say to themselves, I can get a whole chocolate bar for $2.50 at the supermarket.
I could get how many Hershey bars? And you want to say, get yourself the Hershey bars. Go ahead.
Thank you for keeping your language clean here, Carrie.
Yes, I know.
I see the bubbling effect there.
I just about said it. It really is. You're getting a very different product than buying a Hershey bar.
Mm-hmm.
You are getting quality fine chocolate, which is made with a whole lot more cocoa butter than traditional than the Hershey bar type of chocolate. Often with single origin chocolates from all around the world, which are.
I've actually understood. I've got most of them on my shelf, just sitting there, and every morning I get there, they smile to me.
Yes,
they say good morning, and it really is fun. Being able to offer all these different flavors. I get asked that question. What's the difference with origin chocolate? And I say, when you buy a Lindt, or let's not mention names. When you buy a Hershey,
another name.
Then you're buying something that tastes exactly the same every time.
Yes.
How do they do that? They have to blanch the flavor. They have suck
blenders,
it dry.
Just like coffee blenders have. People say, okay, we're going to add this much of this. We're going to get that smoky flavor from that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas your single origins will change from year to year.
Right.
This year's crop is not necessarily
going to be the
same as
it's
next year's crop. So you have to taste a bunch of these chocolates yourself and decide which characteristics you like. I mean, I like a different dark chocolate than a lot of other people like. I like a smoky, earthy sort of chocolate. No, sour. I don't like sour. I like the earthy, the dirty.
Like the Uganda, the Belcolade Uganda.
The Uganda is lovely. The Papua New Guinea that they used to make was absolutely my favorite. And right now they're Vietnam. They're Vietnam.
Yes, and Vietnam is nice. It is nice.
It's earthy. It's not smoky.
I find it a little bit citrusy as well. I don't know if you've felt that.
I just love it. Just love it. Yeah.
I guess we're digressing, but anyway.
We are.
So
here
we go.
Maybe we can do that. So I thought the other thing we might do is a little bit of dipping.
Awesome. Okay, so tell me a little bit about that. For the viewers, tell us what dipping is all about. What are we doing here?
Dipping is all about coating things in chocolate.
Okay.
So again, we start with a bowl.
Yeah. So just a question for you. Sorry for all the questions, Carrie. I'm really just trying to give the viewers all this kind of insight. So over here, I've got this beautiful chocolate that I'm kind of tempted to eat right now. Why am I using this one? What's the deal?
Why am I using this chocolate?
Yeah, like the chocolate that's laying around here. It's a little bit cold, it looks maybe, but...
why am I not using that? Because I want to show my machine off one more time.
Fair enough. God, ask a stupid question.
Ask a stupid question, get the right answer. There you go.
I guess it is the right answer. Didn't mean to call you stupid, Carrie.
When I do... That was me calling you stupid.
Okay. Well, I must love myself so much.
Dear.
I didn't even notice it.
Okay, so again, you can see that I have very carefully measured the amount of chocolate that I put in there. I don't think I turned on the scale till after I put it down.
Cool. Well, I think you're officially going to say it's 2 grams, which is exactly what you wanted, right?
Exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it was 2.5. There you go.
Okay.
Again, I'm going to stir it in, and we're seeing very quickly how it is clearly tempered.
Beautiful.
Almost immediately.
All right, I'm getting really tempted here to eat some chocolate. I haven't had breakfast, so
oh my god!
I did myself a disservice today.
You could have a little mocha. There's some coffee over there. You could just
I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna switch with you again here.
No, you're not.
I'm not gonna stand your way.
No, you're not.
I'm going back over here.
You're going back over there.
All right, I'm going back. Here we go.
I'm just setting myself up here.
Okay. So here we go.
What have I brought with me? Well, there's many tricks to dipping.
Cool.
And one of my favorite are these, which I've gotten from HomeSense, actually.
So what is this? Is this for like a chocolate?
This is a cake cutting wire.
There we go.
So you set it a certain height, and you just take it through the cake, and it will give you 2 layers.
Okay.
But it's nice to have a wire to scrape on. So, and the beauty of these ones is they have a little bit of silicone on the handle,
put. It
so it
move.
stays put.
There you go. Nice.
If you use the ones that don't have silicone, what I typically do is put a sheet of silicone underneath there, so again it doesn't slip.
Cool.
And then I have my dipping forks. Which dipping fork do I feel like using?
Those are fancy dipping forks.
Fancy dipping forks. Had them made. I love them.
Okay, because I use those dipping forks that you get at like, dr.ca or there's a lot of ways. You can get them on Amazon really as well.
You got to try one of these because you'll get addicted. Okay, you throw your item into your chocolate. You come this side. And flip it over.
I don't know if they can see that.
They probably can't.
Okay. So what you're basically doing is you're making it flush with the chocolate.
You're hitting it on this side.
And then you're hitting it on the back end and it flips over. And then you're able to grab it. Okay.
And then I'm going to do a series of taps and scrapes. Hoping not to scrape it right back into the bowl.
Okay, beautiful.
Then I come over to
the tray.
This. I let it slip off, a little push forward, and then pull my knife or my fork off to the side.
Okay, so you're basically what you're doing is you're coating it, you're tapping it, getting rid of all the excess.
Getting rid of the excess.
And then how do you get it off the tray? Off this? Doesn't it kind of touch the edge? So,
ideally, if your chocolate is a reasonable temperature, you're just letting it slide off by itself.
There you go. Okay, and then because it's creating a slide, that's why you're pushing it on top.
And then you push it just a little bit forward so that you don't end up with a lip on the front.
Got it.
And then getting your forks out of the way on the
So viewers, we now got the Chocolate Doctor's secrets on how to dip Oreos. Here we go. Exciting stuff.
Now this is an online friend who taught me how to dip this way. She is amazing.
Okay.
Absolutely amazing. And I dip Alana's way because that is the right way to dip.
Beautiful. And to be honest, I also dip that way. And we actually did this before. You and I did this, I think, in 2013.
I think maybe.
Yeah. I was about to do a show. And I said, you know what? I want to make sure I'm doing this the way you're doing it. So I came down and you showed me exactly this kind of dipping routine. So that's pretty cool. Again, I'm having some nostalgia here.
And when I do classes like with little kids and stuff like that, I teach the first kid. The first kid has to teach the next kid. That kid has to teach the kid after him.
Nice.
And it works out a little better than that game where you whisper a secret into somebody's ear.
Nice management style there with your events, Gary.
Now, again, I tend to like to dip things in milk chocolate. And decorate them in dark chocolate.
Right.
Now, the other thing that we're going to do.
And is that because it's more, what?
It's just, again, it's softer to bite into. And it's just more traditional.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
When you want to decorate these, what you can do, I mean, you can drizzle some contrasting chocolate onto it, or you can come back with your dipping fork when they're just starting to set up. And you can just touch them.
So you're using the design of the dipping fork to create a design.
To create a design.
And a textured design on your chocolate.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I do that as well.
Here, try this.
Yeah. Sure. I will. I haven't done this before.
He's going to get addicted.
There we go.
I haven't told him how much I charge for these dipping forks yet.
I don't want to ask. I don't want to know. Let's see how I go here. Here we go. Doing exactly the way you're telling me to do it. Here we go. Slide it down. Push it forward. Swipe. There we go.
Did you like that dipping fork? Does that not have a nice...
You know what I like about it? First of all, I like the way when I grip it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a gentle grip.
Yeah.
Usually I kind of find myself holding it tight.
It's got a spot for your thumb built into it.
Yes. And then I also like the width of
And it also goes in the dishwasher because it's 100% stainless steel.
There you go. No, I'm definitely going to consider buying one of these from Carrie. At least one.
Okay, dip a few more.
All right, I'm going for it. Here we go.
See one, do one, teach one. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have anybody else to instruct here, so I'm just going to instruct myself, if that's okay.
You go right ahead.
And while we're at it, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about the Easy Temper before we're just about at the end of the show here? So I'd love to hear, maybe your viewers would love to hear a little bit more details from you on the Easy Temper. Maybe how can they get it?
So
what's the cost?
If you're interested in an Easy Temper, www.eztemper.com.
Okay.
There is all sorts of video on there that shows you how to use it, how to temper ganache fillings and everything with it.
Yep.
There is pricing information there.
Yep.
There's also a bit of a break for Canadians who are able to pay in Canadian funds, so you need to send me an email and I can tell you all about that.
Okay, so easytemper.com.
Yep.
Okay, and I guess they can just Google easytemper.com, they'll find it.
Yep.
Right, and then they can purchase directly online?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have no distributors. Everything gets shipped out of my house.
Okay. And tell me, so the cost is in US dollars or Canadian?
It's in US dollars.
In US. And if they want Canadian prices, they can just send you an email?
Send me an email. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when we're looking at this machine, how much kind of warranty does it have on it?
It's a year warranty.
Okay.
Up until this point, I basically honored that warranty indefinitely.
Okay.
In spite of it only having a 1 year warranty.
And I'll attest to that. A year ago, which was already 2 years in.
2 years in, yes.
I had an issue, and you just took it and brought it back and gave me a replacement one while I was waiting.
Yeah.
But I am local. I'm not far from you, so
Yes.
I guess that's.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just me, or
Oh no, replacement ones have gone out to other people all over.
have they
the
really?
place.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
So what do we got there?
We've got Twizzlers. I was in the grocery
Twizzlers.
store last night and I saw these absolutely lovely fruit flavored Twizzlers.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, who doesn't like?
Who does not
Who doesn't
like
like
Twizzlers?
fruit
And they
Twizzlers?
dip so nicely in chocolate, don't they?
Uh,
So you can dip some.
you know what? I'm going to let you dip them.
Oh, come on.
We're just about the end of the show.
Okay.
So we got
You
we've got
keep
another couple of
talking, I'll
minutes.
keep dipping.
So I'm just
There
going to
you
do a little bit of a summary here. So again, the Easy Temper, the easy way to temper chocolate, right?
Yeah.
By the Chocolate Doctor. You can get it online on Carrie Beal's website, easytemper.com. Chocolate Tales is going to be running these shows. We're going to be bringing in different people. It's either professionals from the industry, or it could also be maybe some staff of ours. It could be people that just love chocolate and want to be on a show. If you are interested to be one of those coming into the show, then you can also contact Chocolate Tales myself through the website, chocolatales.ca. We run a lot of workshops. So what Carrie's doing, in fact, is something that is very unique to Carrie. We also have things that are unique to Chocolate Tales, like birthday parties, corporate events, team building, things like that. We also make chocolate. Carrie, do you make chocolate? Do you take chocolate orders, or is it more kind of...
I try to avoid that at all costs.
Okay, fair enough. So you're more the professional industry.
I like to teach professionals. I like to teach amateurs as well, but more than that, I like to teach professionals.
Right.
And I make chocolate and take it into work because the nurses are my best customers.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes. Well, everybody loves
Yes.
Carrie Beal.
Everybody loves chocolate.
Everybody
That's what
loves
it is.
chocolate.
There's the odd person in the world that doesn't love chocolate.
Yeah. So the statistics say that 90% of the population love chocolate.
And the other 10% are lying?
No, the other 10% are either have sensitivities or they have allergies.
Yeah, I do
things
see.
like
I
that.
do see a lot of people who dark chocolate is a migraine,
Right.
migraine causing issue. But white chocolate is fine. But then a lot of people don't like white chocolate.
'Cause
And a lot
it's
of
very
people
sugary, it's just candy.
argue that white chocolate isn't really white chocolate. But there are some lovely white chocolates.
Right.
that
And
are
I can
not-
attest to that,
Not
yes.
disgustingly sweet. Or
So what's your favorite professional brand when it comes to chocolate?
I tend to use a lot of Belcolade.
Belcolade, yep.
Which is the largest Belgian chocolate company you've never heard of before.
Right. Yes.
I do also use a fair bit of cocoaberry.
Yep.
And Calabo chocolate, but I would say my standard at home is typically the Belcolade.
Yeah, and in fact, Chocolate Tales, we do exactly the same. We work with Cocoberry, we work with Calabo, and we work with Belcolade. We're a peanut and tree nut free company, so
Yes, and
we're
the
restricted
Belcolade,
to the types of
Belcolade
chocolates we
is
can
peanut
work
and
with.
tree nut free, which is how I got involved with them in the first place.
Right. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's super cool. I like these Twizzlers. I like that you're leaving the
Yes.
edge so you can see what it is that
And
you're
then
actually...
you drizzle them, of course, with some milk and some white
Beautiful.
chocolate. So
Amazing.
They've got some contrast, right?
Amazing. So Carrie, thanks so much for coming on to the show today.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I guess this is perfect for me because it all really started. It started a long time ago for me with chocolate, but I feel like the moment we met is when my kind of career really started to take off with Chocolate Tales. So for me, it was really important to have you as my first guest on the show and kind of kickstart the show. So for me, it's like a real tie-in circle. So thanks again for coming in, and I will see you again many times.
Oh, yes,
for
you
sure.
will. Oh, yes,
And
you will.
if anybody wants to speak with Carrie directly, they can go to your website. You have a website besides the Easy Temper? Do you have
I do have the Chocolate Doctor.
the Chocolate Doctor
.ca.
.ca.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. All right. Thanks everyone for joining the show. I will see you next month. Take care.